Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got another brand new story to share with you today, so let's begin. My name is Dennis. I never thought I'd be here, telling this story. But life has a way of throwing things at you when you least expect it. This isn't just any story. It's about betrayal at the lowest point in my life. I'm just a businessman, a stable home, and what I thought was a loving marriage. My wife, Evelyn, and I had been married for 6 years, and like any couple, we had our ups and downs. But if you had asked me back then if I trusted her, I would have said yes, without hesitation. But trust is a funny thing. It takes years to build, and just seconds to destroy. You see, I had just lost my mother to cancer. And when I say lost, I mean it in the most painful way possible. She wasn't just my mother. She was my best friend. She raised me on her own after my father passed, and from that moment on, she became everything to me. She didn't just fill the role of a parent. She became my protector, my teacher, and my biggest supporter. She was the thread that held our family together, the reason we never fell apart even in the hardest times. When I got married, I never moved far. I wanted to be close to her. In fact, my wife Evelyn and I lived in the same city as her, just a short 45-minute drive away. I made sure to visit her as often as I could, and whenever I couldn't, she would call me just to check in. And she was gone. The funeral planning was exhausting, both physically and emotionally. No one prepares you for how much there is to handle when someone dies. The paperwork, the calls, the endless details, it all felt like a blur. People kept coming in and out of the house, offering condolences, asking questions, and needing answers. And through it all, Evelyn was there. She helped with the calls, the arrangements, and making sure I ate something even when I had no appetite. I was drowning in grief, and she was the only thing keeping me afloat. At least, that's what I thought at the time. Little did I know that the person I trusted the most was about to break me in a way that even my mother's death couldn't. The day of the burial was a blur of emotions. People came from everywhere, family, friends, neighbors, even people I barely knew, all to pay their respects. My mother had been deeply involved in the community, always lending a hand where she could. And now, in her absence, everyone wanted to show their gratitude. I should have been able to focus on saying goodbye, but grief doesn't give you that luxury. Instead, I found myself nodding absent-mindedly, forcing smiles, shaking hands, and listening to people tell me how sorry they were, how my mother was a great woman, and how she was in a better place. Inside, I felt numb. The reality of her being gone hadn't fully sunk in yet. I kept expecting her to walk in, to tell me everything was fine, to remind me to eat something. But all I had were the voices of people who could never fill the space she left behind. Amid the chaos, Evelyn leaned in close, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "Babe, I need to head home real quick. My dress is messed up and I don't want to be like this all day." I barely processed her words. I turned to her for the first time in hours and noticed the small stain near the bottom of her dress. She sounded uncomfortable. I sighed, giving her a small nod. "All right. Just don't be too long." She smiled, kissed my cheek, and promised she'd be back soon. Then, she walked off to our car and drove away. At that moment, I thought nothing of it. I had no reason to. I had no idea that this small excuse, this little moment, was about to unravel everything. I was so caught up in the constant flow of conversations, the stream of people coming, the never-ending condolences, that I hardly noticed how long it had been since Evelyn left. People came and went, each sharing a memory of my mother, a word of comfort, a promise to always be there if I needed anything. I nodded, thanked them, and tried to absorb the weight of their words, but my mind was elsewhere. At some point, I remembered that I needed something from home, just a small but important item I had forgotten earlier. It wasn't urgent, but it was something Evelyn could easily bring when she returned. Pulling out my phone, I dialed her number, expecting a quick answer. Instead, the call went straight to voicemail. Her phone was off. I frowned, but didn't think much of it at first. Maybe her battery died. Maybe she left it charging at home while changing, so I sent a quick message, expecting her to see it as soon as her phone comes on. I shrugged and got pulled back into the conversations around me. An uncle was sharing stories about my mom's kindness. I listened, or at least tried to, offering polite nods and murmurs of agreement. Time moved strangely, stretching and contracting in a way that made it hard to keep track of. Then, 2 hours slipped by. I glanced around, expecting to see Evelyn walking in, freshly changed, maybe carrying a small bag with the item I had asked for. But she wasn't there. That's when it hit me. Not only had I not spoken to her, but she also hadn't come back. Checking my phone again, I saw no messages, no missed calls, nothing. My stomach tightened as I dialed her number again. Still off. I tried once more, but it was the same result. A quiet unease began to settle in my chest. I tried to push away the thoughts creeping into my mind. Evelyn wouldn't just disappear. There had to be a reasonable explanation. But as another hour passed with no word from her, I found it harder to shake off the uneasy feeling that had started growing inside me. The sun had started to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard. If I wanted that item, I needed to figure out another way to get it. More than that, I needed to know why Evelyn hadn't returned. Something just didn't add up. I turned to my sister, who had been sitting beside me, quietly watching me check my phone over and over. She must have seen the worry on my face, because she asked, "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied before letting out a slow breath. "Hey, can I borrow your car real quick? I need to grab something from home." She hesitated for a moment before handing me the keys. "You sure you don't want me to send someone?" "No, it's fine. I'll be quick." As I got into the driver's seat and pulled out of the driveway, my mind was racing. I had no idea what I was about to walk into. As I pulled into my driveway, everything seemed normal. The porch light had automatically switched on, casting a faint glow over the front steps. I took a deep breath, turned off the car, and stepped out. The house was quiet. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, walking cautiously down the hallway. My footsteps echoed lightly against the floor as I moved toward our bedroom. My mind tried to rationalize her absence. Maybe she had changed and decided to lie down for a bit. Maybe she was in the shower. Maybe she had just forgotten about the time. But as I reached the bedroom door, I heard a soft moan from the other side. I pushed the door open, not knowing what to expect, and my heart stopped. There she was, half naked, tangled up in bed with another man. Time froze. My mind refused to process what I was seeing, but my body knew. A rush of cold disbelief ran through me, and my breath caught in my throat. The man beside her, the same coworker she had introduced earlier that day. The one who had come to pay his respects at my mother's burial. The one who had stood in front of me just hours ago, shaking my hand and muttering condolences. And now, he was in my bed with my wife. A used condom sat on the nightstand, damning proof that this wasn't some mistake. They had already had their fun. They had planned this. They had been so sure I wouldn't come home, so sure I'd be too broken to think straight. Evelyn's eyes went wide with shock as she scrambled to grab the sheets, covering herself in panic. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She wasn't expecting me. She was wrong. The more I thought about what I was seeing, the more my heart hurt like it was pierced with something sharp. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the guy. I just stood there, staring at the scene in front of me. My wife, half naked, desperately clutching the sheets around her body, and the man who had been in my home and my bed, defiling what was supposed to be sacred. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. At that moment, I felt nothing, just a hollow, sinking emptiness. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and without a word, snapped a picture. Then another, and another. Then a short video. Part of me still needed proof, evidence, that I wasn't hallucinating, that this wasn't some cruel nightmare I'd wake up from. I wanted a reminder of the exact moment my marriage died, the moment I saw Evelyn for who she truly was. Evelyn let out a sharp gasp. She jolted up, eyes wild with panic, as she reached toward me. "Babe, it's not what you think. Please let me explain." Her voice was frantic, filled with desperation, but all I heard was lies. Not what I think. What exactly was I supposed to think? That they were just lying in bed, half-naked, discussing world peace? That the condom on the nightstand was just a souvenir? That she had somehow tripped and landed on him? I didn't care to hear whatever excuse she was about to cook up. I had seen enough. I turned around and walked out. I heard her scramble off the bed, her feet hitting the floor as she ran after me. "Dennis, wait. Please, just talk to me." I didn't stop. I didn't even glance back. As I stepped outside, she reached for my arm, but I shook her off. My mind was set. Before I got into the car, I turned to her one last time, my voice low and firm. "Don't bother coming to the family house. If I see you there, I swear I'll expose you right in front of everyone." The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, then closed, like she wanted to protest, but didn't know what to say. I could see the fear in her eyes, not just fear of losing me, but fear of what would happen if the truth came out. I didn't give her another second. I got into my sister's car, started the engine, and drove off. I left her standing there, half-dressed, and drowning in the mess she created. I drove back to the family house mostly in complete silence. I only spoke to my lawyer. My mind was a mess, my thoughts tangled in a storm I couldn't fully process yet. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw my relatives gathered in small groups, still talking, still grieving. They had no idea what had just happened. I stepped out of the car, took a deep breath, and walked inside. If anyone noticed anything off about me, they didn't say. Maybe they assumed it was just the weight of losing my mother. In a way, they were right. I had lost 2 people that day, one to death, the other to betrayal. I forced myself to sit with my uncles, to nod along to their stories, to accept the condolences that kept coming. But inside, I was disconnected from it all. My body was there, but my mind was somewhere else, already mapping out the next steps. Evelyn's calls started coming in within minutes of me leaving the house. One missed call, then another, then another. Soon, texts followed. "Dennis, please pick up." "Babe, just talk to me. Please don't tell anyone. I made a mistake. Let's fix this." I didn't even open them. I just watched as the notifications stacked up on my screen before silencing my phone and slipping it into my pocket. She could beg all she wanted. I was done listening. By the time the last guest had left and the house had quieted down, I excused myself and went to my old room. I sat down at the desk, turned on my laptop, and started securing everything. If Evelyn thought I would sit back and cry while she figured out how to weasel her way out of this, she was in for a rude awakening. The first thing I did was log into all my bank accounts. When we got married, everything was in my name. I had given her access, but she was never a primary account holder. That was about to change. I reset every password, cutting her off from the money she had once so easily accessed. I wasn't worried about the joint account. It barely had anything in it. I left it untouched, a symbolic grave for whatever illusion of trust we once had. Next, I moved to my business accounts and insurance policies. I had once thought of Evelyn as my future, my family. That's why, after we got married, I had listed her as my beneficiary in case something ever happened to me. Not anymore. With a few clicks, her name was erased from every document that once promised her security. She had already taken enough from me, my trust, my respect, my peace. She wasn't getting anything else. With that done, I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. The messages on my phone kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. I didn't care. Tomorrow, she would wake up to the beginning of the end. The next morning, Evelyn probably woke up thinking she had time to come up with the perfect excuse, time to manipulate the situation. But she was wrong. By the time she stepped into her office, she had already lost. I had made my move the night before. I had called my lawyer on my way back to the family house after catching her with that bastard. I didn't need time to think. I didn't need a week to process my emotions. I already knew what needed to be done. When my lawyer tried to assure me that he'd need at least a week to get the divorce papers ready, I cut him off. Find a way to get it done by morning, or I'll find someone else to handle all my legal affairs, business included. He didn't argue after that. Money talks. And so, first thing in the morning, a courier walked into Evelyn's workplace, carrying an envelope with her name on it. The divorce papers. I could only imagine how she felt as she opened it. She had no idea that this was just the first strike. Days passed. I didn't speak to her. I didn't see her. But I wasn't done yet. She had shattered my trust, humiliated me, and walked all over my grief as if it meant nothing. I wasn't about to let her quietly move on with her life, while I was left to pick up the pieces. I escalated things. I prepared another set of deliveries. This time it was the truth of who she really was. Each package had the pictures I had taken that night, the undeniable proof of her betrayal. I sent them to her employer. If she wanted to claim her lover was just a coworker, let's see how comfortable she'd be working with that reputation. Her family and friends, so she couldn't twist the story and play the victim. No lies, no manipulation, just cold, hard proof of what she had done. I knew exactly when the deliveries arrived, because she was frantically calling me, desperately trying to get ahead of the damage. I didn't answer. Then came the text. Dennis, please stop. We need to talk. Babe, I'm sorry. I messed up. Please, just give me a chance to explain. Dennis, please, my family is calling me. They know. My boss saw the pictures. I'm going to lose my job. Please, don't do this to me. I didn't reply. She could beg all she wanted, but there was nothing left to save. There was one last thing left to do, something I had decided days after I saw Evelyn in bed with another man. The house we lived in, the home we built together after our wedding, wasn't just any house. It was a wedding gift from my mother, a symbol of her love, her blessings, and her hope for our future. And Evelyn desecrated it. She didn't just cheat on me. She didn't just betray our marriage. She disrespected my mother's memory. She turned that house into the scene of her affair, tainting everything it stood for. There was no way I was going to let her continue living in it. I made the decision without hesitation. I was selling the house. I wasted no time. I contacted a realtor, explained that I wanted it listed immediately. The market was good, and with the house's value, I knew it wouldn't take long to sell. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted it gone. I wanted her gone. The moment the listing went up, I made sure Evelyn saw it. She had been blowing up my phone with texts and calls, and when she realized what I was doing, she lost it. Dennis, please, you can't sell the house. Where am I supposed to go? This is our home. No, it wasn't. Not anymore. She thought she could destroy everything and still have a safety net. She thought she could betray me and still have a place to call home. But she was wrong. By the time she fully understood that I was serious, it was already too late. The messages didn't stop. Evelyn called and texted daily, her desperation growing with every unanswered attempt. At first, her texts were apologetic, filled with regret. Dennis, please, I know I hurt you, but can we talk? I made a mistake. I swear it didn't mean anything. I still love you. You don't have to do this. Let's fix things, please. But I had nothing to say to her. There was nothing left to fix. As days passed, the messages shifted from pleading to anger and frustration. So that's it? You're just going to throw everything away? You think you're punishing me, but you're just being petty. Fine. Do whatever you want. I don't need you. And then, just as suddenly, the anger disappeared, replaced again by guilt and desperation. Dennis, I'm sorry. Please. Just talk to me one last time. I never answered. I don't know what's happening in her life now, and honestly, I don't care. She made her choices. Now, she had to live with them. As for me, I was finally free. As I sat in silence, I finally felt at peace. Not because I had moved on entirely, grief and betrayal don't just vanish overnight, but because I had taken back control. If there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's that karma doesn't always wait. Sometimes, you deliver it yourself. Evelyn thought she could cheat, lie, and move on while I wallowed in pain. She thought she could destroy me and still have the comfort of our home, our life, my forgiveness. But she was wrong. Betrayal teaches you who people really are, but it also teaches you who you are. And I learned that I'm not the kind of man who lets disloyalty slide. That's my story. I hope it helps someone out there who thinks they owe a cheater forgiveness. You don't. Thanks for listening, and let me know what you think about the whole situation. Share this with those you think will like to see this.